بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب الحمد لله رب العالمين، والصلاة والسلام على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين. We are still in the chapter of nouns that are marfu', right? Marfu'atul asma. Nouns that are marfu'. We have gone over Dhanna. Before that, we went over Kana and her sisters, and that we said Kana makes its subject or its noun madmum, marfu', and its predicate mansub. And then Inna and her sisters, we said that Inna makes, the opposite. Inna makes her predicate marfu' and her subject mansub. And Dhanna just goes all the way and takes the subject and predicate and doesn't even keep them as subjects and predicates. It makes the both of them objects for itself. So it's a dictator. So it makes both of them an object for itself. Therefore, we will read, inshallah, that objects always have the inflection of nasab. And the reason Dhanna was mentioned in the chapter of Marfu'at al-Asma, meaning nouns that are marfu', is because it is an agent, and it is always mentioned when the other agents of that we Raf are mentioned, such as Kana and his sisters, and Inna and her sisters. And just for the sake of keeping the relatives in the same room, or keeping people that know each other in the same room so they don't get bored and they don't get lonely, we also include Dhanna in this chapter, even though Dhanna is not an agent of Rafa. Okay, so now we will discuss something else today, inshallah. And this falls under the category of followers, meaning these nouns, even though they become marfu', they are not the first. They're not directly impacted by the agents. They're indirectly impacted by the agents through that which they follow. For example, if they follow a noun that is marfu', they become marfu'. If they follow a noun that is mansub, they become mansub. And if they follow a noun that is makhfud or majroor, they become majroor, right? So that's why we call them followers. And there are 4 followers. One of them is the adjective, inshallah, which we will discuss today. And we'll discuss the other 3 in the following classes. And the adjective has to follow a noun. It has to belong, has to be associated to a noun, right? You cannot describe nothing. You have to describe something, right? And that something decides the inflection of this adjective. If that something is marfu', this adjective will become marfu'. And the reason we're mentioning it in this chapter is because this an adjective can be a marfu' noun if it follows a marfu' noun, right? So what does the author say, rahimahullah? He says, النعت تابع للمنعوت في رفعه ونصبه وخفضه وتعريفه وتنكيره. تقول قام زيد العاقل ورأيت زيدا العاقل ومررت بزيد العاقل. والمعرفة 5 أشياء: المضمر نحو أنا وأنت، والعلم نحو زيد ومكة، والاسم المبهم نحو هذا وهذه وهؤلاء، والاسم الذي فيه الألف واللام نحو الرجل والغلام وما أضيف إلى واحد من هذه الأربعة. والنكرة كل اسم شاع في جنسه لا يختص به واحد دون آخر وتقريبه. والنكرة كل اسم شاع في جنسه لا يختص به واحد دون آخر وتقريبه كل ما صلح دخول الألف واللام عليه نحو الرجل والفرس. أو نحو الرجل والفرس, depending on how you want to describe the role of الرجل and الفرس. So going back to the translation, النعت تابع للمنعوت في رفعه ونصبه وخفضه وتعريفه وتنكيره. The author says the adjective follows the described, that which this adjective is describing. The adjective follows the described in its rafa, nasab, khafd, definiteness and indefiniteness, right? For example, and then the author gives us an example. He says, تقول قام زيد العاقل ورأيت زيدا العاقلة ومررت بزيد العاقل. You say the smart Zaid stood. I saw the smart Zaid and I passed by the smart Zaid. Now here in English it becomes a bit tricky because an adjective can actually, I guess you could say, I saw Zaid the knowledgeable. So I could translate it more in line to what we have. I could say I saw Zaid, or Zaid Zaid the knowledgeable. Yeah, so al-aqil means smart. So I'll keep it the way I have, but I'll just try to explain it in a way that makes sense to you guys. So in in Arabic, an adjective always comes after that which is described. Even though in English, for example, here the smart Zaid stood. Smartness is what is an adjective for Zaid, isn't it? The smart Zaid.
Yeah.
We are describing Zaid as being smart, but smart comes before Zaid. Even though it is, but in Arabic, smart would come after Zaid, and that is why it follows Zaid in its inflection. For example, you say قام زيد العاقل. Zaydun is the subject of قام, so قام is the verb, right? قام قام is the verb. Zaydun is the subject of the verb. Zaydun is the subject of the verb, and al-aqil al-aqilu is the adjective. Is the adjective. Now al-aqilu will follow Zaydun in its inflection. Will follow Zaydun in its inflection. So that is why we will give it a dhamma. Yes, go ahead, brother Maraja.
Sheikh. Yeah, Sheikh. I understand from this explanation that since the subject is Rafa, the adjective is also Rafa over here,
Mhm.
and that's what it means by following the Rafa, Nasab,
Yeah,
and Kaf.
yeah.
But the thing is, Sheikh,
Right.
will it also be true for the position? I mean, will the adjective always be right beside the uh, subject, or can it be several words down the sentence, or can it be in front, the way we say it in English?
No, it should be right before. Yeah, right, for the
Right?
preceding the man'ut, or preceding that which it describes.
Okay, all right. Okay, Sheikh. Thank you, Sheikh.
You cannot say, for example, Ra'aytu Zaydan. Well, you can have multiple. Adjectives coming one after another. Uh, yeah. So in that case, so in yeah. So in that case, but still, the an adjective cannot be perceived. For example, you cannot say. Uh, you cannot say. ضرب زيد عمرا ضرب زيد عمرا القوي, right? ضرب زيد عمرا القوي. You cannot say, which means Zaid hit Amr the strong. Now here in Arabic, in English, basically the strong would be what? Would be an adjective for Zaid or Amr. Zaid hit Amr the strong.
The one who got Hated. I mean hate.
Okay.
Yeah,
I have a question, Brother Sahel.
I can. Yeah, brother Khadruddin, what is your question?
Okay, so as long as the as my first question actually is how much how many adjectives could a subject like have that are not conflicting each other is what I'm trying to say at least. Because like you can't say like somebody's strong and weak at the same time, but
Yeah.
like what I mean by is like, is there like a limit on how many adjectives you could say in a sentence to describe the subject in Arabic?
So for example, you say قام زيد العالم الكريم. قام زيد العالم الكريم. You say Zaid stood. So basically, in English, we would say the knowledgeable and generous Zaid stood. Knowledgeable and generous are both adjectives for Zaid, right? So as long as I mean, you can. So as far as grammar is concerned, right? You can have as many adjectives as you want for a given person. But as far as logic is concerned, do some of those make sense, right? So that actually that becomes a different conversation. We're going into a different topic. Um, whether like having two adjectives that contradict each other would make
Yeah,
sense
Sheikh.
for a person, which
Oh,
doesn't make sense, right? But you can have multiple adjectives. For example, the generous, generous and knowledgeable and pious Zaid came. Does that make sense?
I gotcha.
Sheikh,
Okay.
in English, yeah, Sheikh, sorry about that. In English, we have this thing called oxymoron, I think, which describes conflicting adjectives.
Mm,
Right. I mean, I can't
yeah.
come up with an example right now, but I remember the term is called oxymoron, which is a conflicting adjective, I
Mm.
believe. So, do we have that
Um,
in Arabic?
well, we don't. I don't think we have that terminology. Again, that goes back to whether your speech makes sense or not, but it
Yeah.
doesn't go. It doesn't indicate whether that your speech is grammatically correct or not. Does that make sense? So you can have
Yes.
you can say the knowledgeable and stupid I don't know, person X came.
Yeah.
I mean, grammatically, I mean, there's nothing wrong with what you have
Yeah.
said, but it doesn't really make sense, right? You cannot be knowledgeable and stupid at the same time,
Mm,
unless
mm,
you're considering different periods of time.
yeah.
Right? Maybe he was smart at some point. Maybe he was stupid at some point, and that became smart. So, but you cannot, yeah. So it wouldn't make sense that you cannot
Yeah.
at any given time you cannot give a person two adjectives that contradict each other. Um,
Mm.
yes. So as far as grammatically, we don't really care if it makes sense or not, as long as whether it's grammatically correct or not. Uh, does that answer all of your questions?
Yes, Sheikh. Jazakallahu khairan.
Okay. Well, yeah.
Yes.
uh, excuse me. So yes. So here the first example is an example that the author gives rahimahullah for nasab or for rafa. The second example is an example he gives for nasab. The third example is an example he gives for khafad. Right? Even though we are still in the chapter of marfu'at, he is still the author gives you examples for nasb and khafad as well, just for the sake of completeness. So قام زيد العاقل, the smart Zaid stood. ورأيت زيدا العاقل, I saw the smart Zaid. ومررت بزيد العاقل, I passed by the smart Zaid. وَالْمَعْرِفَةُ خَمْسَةُ أَشْيَاء. So you may ask, okay, we know what rafa is, we know what nasab is, we know what khafad is. These are all inflections, right?
Yes. Types of inflection.
But what does it mean for something to be definite and something to be indefinite? What does it mean when a noun is definite and when a noun is indefinite?
Sheikh, I believe by definite it means specific names, the terms we used for different names, and I believe indefinite, it's there, I guess, the pronouns, is it?
Yeah, well, that that's one of the categories of the definiteness, right? The name, but the definite is referring to something that is not that there for which there is no room for interpretation, meaning it's set in stone. It cannot be used in reference to multiple things, right? It belongs to one
Apple, for
object.
instance.
The apple, yes, the apple. For example, that apple you eat, the apple you're eating.
Okay.
That's an example for a name, but it doesn't have to. It doesn't always have to be a name. For example, a pronoun is also definite. For example, you say I. When you say I, there is no room for you, meaning anyone else other than you, right? Um, or when you say this, when you say this is also definite because you're referring to something, and when you tell someone this is too big, they know exactly what object you're talking about. So it's definite. Um, it doesn't. The word that you basically a noun that is definite is cannot be used for multiple things at the same time. It belongs only to one thing and one thing only. So what does the author say? He say, وَالْمَعْرِفَةُ خَمْسَةُ أَشْيَاء. And the definite noun is of 5 types. The pronouns such as I and you, right? So the pronouns such as the I and you, and the scholars have differed regarding which one of these nouns is the most definite, meaning which one of these nouns is the most concrete. And basically, the majority of scholars have said that pronouns are the most concrete.
Oh.
Because why? Because, for example, if I say Zaid is coming, Zaid is a noun that can be given to many people, even though I personally, even though I may be using it for a particular person, the people who are hearing it may not know who Zaid is. Maybe maybe thinking about multiple people at the same time, right? But if I say I am coming, is there room for when I say I for me to mean I someone else, right? There is no room. So it is the most definite. So I is the most definite noun of all in all languages. But then Sibawayhi, who is basically is the I guess you could say the father of all grammarians, of all Arab grammarians, even though he was Persian, but he's considered the teacher of all grammarians. He says he was the first one to say that Allah is the most definite noun. He said he was the first person to say that Allah is the most definite noun, because when you say Allah, it goes only to one being. There is no ambiguity, even less ambiguous than I, because so this goes into a state of tazkiyah as well, because when you say I, this I could be referring to different sides of you. Maybe it could be the eye of pride, it could be the eye of pain, it could be the eye of need and help, right? It doesn't always take the same form, but when you say Allah, it always goes to the most pure being, the creator of the heavens and the earth. There are no he doesn't change states for Allah to mean different things at different times, right? So Allah is Allah. So they say someone saw him in their dream, and they said, what did Allah Azza wa Jal, how did Allah Azza wa Jal treat you after you died? Or did someone I don't recall exactly the question, but the answer was he was treated very generously after passing away, and the reason he was treated very generously was because of his statement, Allah a'raful ma'arif. Allah is the most definite of definite nouns. And this is, if you guys watch my one of my khutbahs, we talked about how every human being knows Allah from a promise we gave in the realm of these souls. So so this goes into spirituality, and this is where like grammar and spirituality like merge, and this is like when different sciences merge, that is when it becomes very interesting and beautiful. And you'll see that this is how this happens a lot in basically in Islamic sciences, which doesn't necessarily happen in the other sciences, because of the spiritual aspect, because of the truth behind the message of Islam and the Quran and the teachings of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So these are like things that boosters, like when you're studying, when you're on your path to learn, for example, a particular knowledge, these things like these, when these things are mentioned, they kind of push you, they're like boost your iman and make you stronger. Yes. So any questions about what we have discussed so far?
No, Sheikh.
Okay. So let's go to the next slide. Wal-alamu. The second definite noun is al-alam, and the noun and the name. Al-alam means name. Al-alamu nahu Zaydun wa Makkah, and the name such as Zayd and Makkah. Both of these are nouns for one of them is a noun for a person, the other one is a noun for a place. Wal-ismu mubhamu, and the ambiguous noun. Nahu such as this and those, such as this and those. Now, why do we call it ambiguous? Because when I say this, it is ambiguous unless you know what I'm pointing to, right? If I say to you guys, this is very tasty, you guys don't see anything in front of me, right? You don't know what I'm talking about. But if I bring my plate here and say this is very tasty, right? This is like Nutella. Then the ambiguity goes away, right? I showed you what I'm talking about. And so as long as that ambiguity is there, it's not definite. But when I brought the plate and I showed you, and then I said this, then that is when it became definite, meaning there was no your thoughts could not go anywhere else other than thinking about Nutella and wanting to go get some after the class. Now, والاسم الذي فيه الألف واللام نحو الرجل والغلام. And the third or the fourth definite noun is the noun that begins with al-alif and lam, such as the man and the servant. So this is basically the easiest one to relate to, right? Because in English, this is what we call the is the definite noun, or as the article of the definite article. Yeah, right. The is the definite article, so it makes something that is not definite definite. And alif and lam, as we said at the beginning of the class, or the first class that we had, alif and lam, or basically they mean the in English. They make something definite, right? So al-rajul, the man, al-ghulam, the servant, right? That's the fourth one. And the last one, وما أضيف إلى واحد من هذه الأربعة, and a noun that is associated to one of these four. For example, you say your pen. Your pen. Pen here is not definite by itself. For example, if I said pen, would pen be definite?
It could be any pen, Sheikh.
It could be any pen, right? But when I say your pen, it becomes your pen and
Oh,
no one else, right?
yeah.
So
Okay,
it
yeah,
becomes
yeah.
definite. Or uh, uh, if I said Ardul Mecca, the land of Mecca. If I said Ard, which means land, it would be indefinite. But if I say Ardul Mecca, the land of Mecca, and in English we start adding the to it when we associate it to Mecca. But in Arabic,
Mm.
we don't add alif and lam. We say Ardul Mecca. We don't say Al Ardul Mecca. It wouldn't make sense. Which because you cannot have two different things that indicate definiteness at the same time. If I said Al Ardul Mecca, I am using association and alif and lam, both of which are used for to make something definite, and you cannot use two things that you make something definite at the same time, right? So that is why in Arabic we don't say the land of Mecca, we say al-ardul Mecca, we say ardul Mecca without the alif and lam. But in English, I wanted to mention this so you don't get confused and say, oh, well, we say the land of Mecca. We already have the and then I guess that rule doesn't apply in English, right? But Arabs, as I said, like they're very precise when with these things. They don't waste they don't waste things if they don't have to, right? Um, so here, if alif and lam was put on ard, it would be a waste of alif and lam. And I think I told you guys the story. I was having a conversation with one of my colleagues, and I was telling him how efficient Arabs are when it comes to their language. They don't waste anything. Everything has meaning. And he was saying it makes sense because they had it kind of it it's uh, in um, in agreement with their lifestyle. Living in the desert, you need to be very
Mm.
efficient with water, with resources. So their language basically evolved to match their lifestyle. Um, والنكرة. So that is those that was what we mentioned. What you have mentioned so far are the definite nouns, and then والنكرة كل اسم شائع في جنسه. النكرة means the indefinite. What is the indefinite? The author says النكرة كل اسم شائع في جنسه لا يختص به واحد دون آخر. Any and the indefinite noun is that which is prevalent is the noun which is prevalent amongst its type. I need to get a good translation for jins. For example, the human would be a jins in Arabic. I'm sorry, the animal would be a jins. The animal would be a jins. Another jins would be plantation would be um I'm gonna translate this as type. Okay, all right. We'll leave the exact translation for another day, but here what the author says is an indefinite noun is that which is prevalent amongst its type, not being specific to one and not the others, um such as a horse. For example, if I say a horse is something that can be used for any horse, right? It encompasses any horse. Is prevalent amongst horse, like the this animal that basically has 4 feet, runs very fast, looks like a mule, right? This
Yeah.
animal that we call a horse. Basically, a horse. The name horse can be the noun horse can be used for anything that is of that type, right? That is of that type. That is that type of an animal. So that what makes it nakira. It makes it indefinite. The same thing with man, for example. A man or man is indefinite because it can be used for anyone who is a male, right? Or a woman. A woman can be used for anyone that is a female, right? Um, of the human race, of course. Yeah, so does this make sense as the nakira? Because the nakira is something that actually it is famous amongst grammarians that a nakira is one of the hardest things to define and explain. So does this make sense? Do you guys understand what a nakira, what something that is indefinite is?
Sheikh, we could have said a pen, and that would have been indefinite, right?
A
pen
pen would have been indefinite as well because a pen would apply to anything that resembles
of that
something
type.
like this, right? Yeah,
Yeah,
of this type, right?
yeah, I got it, Sheikh.
Well,
Yeah,
well, the easiest way to understand indefinite, the indefinite from like noun from what I've seen is it's just like it's giving you a general, like you're generalizing like a category, like you see something like you just mentioned, uh, an animal that has two legs that has like the shape of like a horse. You can pretty much mention pretty much anything as that. So
Hmm. Yeah. So yeah. So basically, anything that, yeah. So has four legs, has the shape of a horse, runs fast. Basically, yeah, you could call that animal. It would be a horse, right? You basically excluding a donkey and a mule, it would be a horse. So
or a zebra.
yeah. So that or a zebra, or a zebra. I bet there are some other animals that look like horses as well. Maybe.
Yeah,
Not sure.
Brother Sunil, so perhaps you
Yeah.
can, you know how there is the term like common noun in English. We say,
Com.
common noun. It can be like a book, a pen, I don't know, a
Yeah.
television, a door. So basically anything, any kind of common noun. Does that make sense? Like to call it like
Yeah.
that?
Yeah. It makes sense. Yes. Yeah. And so it's common. Actually, that's good. That's a better word. Common between. Yeah. So yeah. So that definitely makes sense. Yeah. Thank you, brother Fahad. Jazakumullah khairan. Uh, okay. So and then the author, knowing that this may be a bit hard for beginners to completely grasp the understanding of the indefinite noun, he goes further and he says وتقريبه كل ما صلح كل ما صلح دخول الألف واللام عليه نحو الرجل والفرس. He says, and to make it more understandable, basically, it is a noun. It is a noun. It is a noun that accepts alif and lam, al alif and lam, such as the man and the horse. For example, so basically, it is a noun that accepts the. If you see a noun that accepts that you can actually make a sentence with the before it, with the definite article, then that noun is indefinite. For example, he gives the example of the man. If basically the reason man is indefinite is because it accepts the. The reason horse is indefinite is because you can put a d before it. Does that make sense?
yeah, Sheikh.
But if you have a noun which which you cannot put d before it, then that noun would not be indefinite. An example would be, for example, I say the horse, the horse. Can I put another d before the horse? Can I say the horse? I cannot say the horse, right? It wouldn't make sense because it's already the horse. It's
Mm.
already definite. You
Yeah,
cannot make something that is already definite again, more definite. So yeah, so that is that is the end of this chapter. Was it clear for the most part? I think it wasn't too bad. Did you guys have any
yeah,
questions?
Brother, just a very quick question. In
Yes.
this slide, Sorry, the one after. Could you repeat the Arabic again? Like marartu bi zaidin, was it? Or
نعم مررت بزيد العاقل.
ah,
مررت بزيد العاقل.
right. Thank you, brother. Jazakallah.
You're welcome.
I'm just writing it down in my notes. So.
Yeah, وإياكم. No, that's good. بارك الله فيكم. What did you say, brother Khadruddin? You mentioned something.
Oh, I just said that this chapter was clear.
Okay,
It's easy to
Alhamdulillah.
understand.
Alhamdulillah, Alhamdulillah. That's good. So inshallah, if no more questions, we will conclude. سبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين وآخر دعوانا أن الحمد لله رب العالمين وصلى الله على سيدنا محمد وعلى آله وأصحابه وأتباعه أجمعين. السلام عليكم.
Assalamu alaikum, Sheikh.
Walaikum assalam.